What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Points Per Podcast. Thank you for joining us. As always, almost every single week one game is now in the books. We are recording this Monday evening right before the Monday night game. So we got one more left to go. Week one, super exciting. We learned a lot. There's a lot that left us a little confused, and there's certainly a lot to overreact to. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Overreacting, getting our biggest takeaways from week one. And here with me to do that are my friends Will and Fishy. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys enjoyed week one. Will, how are you feeling after this first slate of games?
Hey, man, I'm feeling great. It was a fun week one. I'm hoping I don't have to overreact too badly to Caleb Williams tomorrow for my fantasy team's sake. So looking forward to that.
Very true. Vish, how did week one treat you?
I haven't left my bed in the last 20 hours because I'm so sad about the Ravens. So you could say I'm ready to overreact, man. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. I love it. I'm sorry, but I love it. Without further ado, actually, I do want to shout out real quick. Shout out Jacob Gibbs, Ryan Heath, Rich Rebar, Josh and Hayden, a bunch of these guys doing the Lord's work out there, putting stats and descriptions of these games out there. So a lot of the not the takeaways, but a lot of the stats that I gathered from this video are coming from those guys. They do great work. Check them out. But we're going to jump right into this one with maybe the biggest two running back storylines of fantasy football coming from the 49ers and Seahawks game. We'll start with the 49ers. After scaring us with a missed practice this week due to a calf injury, Christian McCaffrey leads all running backs in touches in week one. Quite the surprise. And he scores nearly 20 half PPR fantasy points without even reaching the end zone. He looks like himself. Should we be looking to sell high and get off the roller coaster ride while we still can? Or are we staying the course and crossing our fingers for health? Will, I'll start with you.
We're going to get mixy early. I'm on the sell high train. Now, I know he scored a lot of fantasy points this weekend. I know there was a ton of volume. I'm not here to argue against any of that. I still love Christian McCaffrey. He's still one of my favorite players of all time. But just looking at this situation itself, to me, it seems like one of those ones that's going to end up falling apart at some point during this season. And why not get off the train while people think things are still at least somewhat okay? Last week, obviously, we had the missed practice on Friday. We had the limited practice on Thursday because Christian McCaffrey thought he felt something going on in his calf. They checked it out. Turns out there was actually nothing there. So medically speaking, there is nothing to worry about. But from my perspective, I still don't think last year's issue has completely disappeared. I don't think that's a thing that's just completely gone. And I think even looking at the stat sheet, you can kind of see that too. Looking at the rushing efficiency from Christian McCaffrey, he averaged 3.1 yards per carry. He looked like himself in terms of how much they wanted to feed the ball to him, but in terms of the explosiveness we usually see, I don't think it was exactly quite there, what we're used to seeing. So I think this is one of those ones. The wheels are there, but they may fall off at some point.
Sheesh. Well, I want to say that you just cooked, but nah, dude. Look, if you sell him, like you're definitely sacrificing your ceiling for maybe a higher floor. I don't know who you're getting in return, but likely the ceiling is not as high. He's the RB1 if he stays healthy all season. Probably, and I think if we look at his metrics and he fell off, maybe top 3 then. And I think we play fantasy to win, not to not lose. And so, as the Wall Street guys say, just gotta hold him to the moon, baby. Let's see what happens.
I think if I had to pick a take between the two, I lean towards Vishy's side. Like, we knew kind of what we were getting into at the draft. Like, if you're making a decision, do you want RB1 overall upside at the risk of, zeros all season? Or do you want to go with a floor player or somebody else kind of in that vicinity? And so if you drafted him, I think you're sticking with him. But I can fully understand the idea, especially if you can get a big package in return. There's just not many running backs that I think can match his ceiling, and in redraft, that's what you're looking for. All right. My apologies, everybody. I did not fulfill my hosting duties. I completely neglected to talk about the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Texans. My bad. Totally just had a brain fart on that one. But we want to come back here to make sure that we touch on those offenses. We'll start with the Seahawks. I thought Kenneth Walker's usage was very interesting. He was a my guy on this channel, someone I think a lot of us had ranked above consensus. But he appeared to be in a 50-50 split with Zach Charbonnet in week one. Not only that, but I thought the offensive line play and the Kubiak system just weren't as impressive as we were hoping they would be. Is it an overreaction to say that Kenneth Walker is a bust at his 4th-round price tag?
I think it's a good question.
Go ahead.
I think to be a bust, he'd have to probably perform at like more of like around 6 or worse ADP. I don't know that yet. I don't think he looks like that yet. But it's possible. He's definitely not looking like a league winner in that kind of round 4 or 5 range. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think if there are people out there trying to say that his value is equal to Zach Charbonnet's now because they are splitting touches like this, it's technically not, because Kenneth Walker is getting the receiving looks. Those are a little bit more valuable of touches, so he is technically still the more valuable of the two to have. As for the Kubiak scheme not being as impressive as we expected, I think we do just need to give it a little bit more time for them to, get their footing and just really get rolling. This is a whole new system with a whole new quarterback, and, things are still coming together, which we saw on the receiving side of things as well. But, I think they just got some growing pains right now.
I think all that's fair. The thing that worries me is that, I thought he was a great pick at his price tag because he would be mostly the bell cow. He would get the majority of the work and potentially be an RB1. And there was the downside risk that he has the injury history, and so he could fall off. But you're willing to pay for that risk considering the upside. With this committee approach, I don't think that ceiling is there anymore. And so, yeah, maybe he's not a total bust, but he's significantly less valuable than I anticipated coming into the season. So I'm worried. All right. The Packers was another team that I skipped. Let's go back to them. I want you guys to tell me if this is an overreaction. I think there was a ton of positivity from a real life perspective, but there's probably less to be excited about from a fantasy perspective with this team. Similar to last year's Packers, outside of Josh Jacobs, you don't know what you're going to get from any of these guys on a weekly basis.
I totally 100% agree. I think outside of Josh Jacobs, or even outside of Josh Jacobs, and I guess Jordan Love because he's running the offense, but when it comes to this receiving group, we have literally no effing idea what is going to happen on a week to week. We went into this week thinking Jaden Reed was dead in the water, and he led the team in targets. So we have literally no idea what they're going to do. We thought Matthew Golden was going to be a guy, 2 targets on the day. He caught both of them, but 2 targets. So we literally have no idea who's going to be a guy for this offense week to week, because I guarantee next week it'll be different.
Yeah, I wouldn't fight you on that guarantee. I thought, and I still do believe that I think a lot of the receivers in that team are good or even great best ball plays. I think like Golden and Reed, I think are going to end up being great values in best ball. Maybe Dobbs too. I mean, he's going to perform. But it's so hard to predict weekly. That might be a cold take. I think people are aware of this, and we saw what happened last season. It's kind of a similar show. And yeah, there's just so much uncertainty that I think it's going to be challenging and frustrating to try to pick which one's going to be good in a redraft weekly basis.
Couldn't agree more. I think if you had to pick one of the receivers or one of the receiving threats, I'm talking about Tucker Kraft. I think he's probably the guy, just based on the thinness at the position, that I'd be most willing to lean into. But yeah, the rest of them, it's going to be up in the air. And then lastly, the other team that I skipped over was the Houston Texans. Still worried about this team. The offensive line was just as bad, if not worse, than last year. Stroud had no time, and the run game was gross for everyone involved. The thing that changed maybe for the worse was that last year, even in those conditions, Nico Collins was still great while he was healthy, but he just put up a 3 for 25 performance in week 1. Again, we're talking start your studs here. I understand, but like, what level of panic versus patience are we talking about? How worried are we about Nico Collins?
Yeah, I'm like 30% spooked, man. Like GameScript should favor them. GameScript should favor them. Like if their offense is good or if their defense isn't good, I think there should be a lot of opportunity in the receiving game. But I agree. Like, I'm worried that a bad O-line, along with what seems to be a variety of receiving options, all of which I think are less talented than Nico Collins, but nonetheless, all of them being there, especially with maybe Christian Kirk coming back and taking away some of their shorter yardage options. If CJ Stroud doesn't have much time, like, all of these things can limit Nico's upside, and I think that's cause for about 30% spook.
Yeah, I think I'll second that 30% spook. I think it's a situation where I think Nico Collins, like we've said, he's the most talented guy in this offense. He's going to end up getting his one way or another, but we do need to see some signs of life from this offense and just some signs of, capability, because it's quite frankly, like you said, looking a little bit worse than last year, to be honest. Kind of need him to pull it together.
Yeah, I was very high on him this year. Like I think I had him ranked as wide receiver 3 in redraft. I'm pulling back on that dramatically. Like I said at the beginning of the prompt, I think we're starting our studs. You're not going to take him out of your lineup immediately after week 1, but scary hours are upon us for sure. But all right, so we covered the 3 teams that I skipped. Apologies again for that, and yeah, we'll probably drop you right back into the video. But let's move on to.
I'm scared.
Well, yeah, aren't we all?
I'm definitely scared. Won't lie.
But with that, let's move on to game number 2. This was the Lions and Packers game. It felt like kind of all of the reasons for optimism that people had for the Packers were proved right, while all of the biggest fears and weaknesses for the Lions were exposed in week 1. We'll start with the Lions and kind of the more disappointing side of the spectrum. The losses to the interior of this offensive line were very, very evident, I thought. It felt like the Lions were dominated in the trenches, not something you typically expect from this team. The new OC, John Morton, I don't think is anywhere close to Ben Johnson. Obviously, it's only been week 1, but this is an overreaction show. I am thinking we chop off like 25% of the fantasy production from basically this entire offense, and that's what we're going to get this year. Is that an overreaction or no?
I don't think so, man. I don't think that's an overreaction. Let's put a 25% discount on there, all the guys, not to their cost, their production. I guess we'll see if Ben Johnson really is a wizard in a couple hours today, but I don't think that's an overreaction.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there, is that what's going to happen tonight. If the Bears come out tonight and they're just firing on all cylinders and it's like, wow, he's really revolutionized this offense. I don't know, this is a whole new look from last year. Unless that happens, I'm not super worried. This is a Lions team going up against a Packers team that was already really, really good, and they just added Micah Parsons. So it's like, I don't want to, discount that too much, but at the same time, I do see where the worry is here with the Lions and how this offense was operating, because it didn't look like it was firing on all cylinders like it has last year. This obviously was the number 1 offense last year, and yesterday they were clearly not that. So,
yeah, I felt like there was a lot of creativity lacking in the offensive scheme and the way that they were drawing things up compared to what we saw with Ben Johnson. I do think it's a good point to note that they were playing the Packers, who are a dramatically improved team, and Micah Parsons dominated this game. So maybe that's one of the tougher matchups that they'll see all season, and things will get better. But I'm of the camp that we gotta lower our expectations significantly for this offense as a whole. Let's go to the Dolphins and the Colts. This was terrible. This was not a fun game to watch. I guess if you're a Colts fan, maybe it was, but we're starting with the Dolphins side of the ball. It was an absolute dumpster fire. The team was bad. Seems like a fully dysfunctional organization. Mike McDaniel's seat couldn't be hotter. Tua looks terrible. The offensive line is Swiss cheese. Even considering all of that, because I fully agree with those takes, is Devon Achane still viable when it comes to garbage time? Like, is he going to be able to pay off his draft price? Overreaction or not?
I think Devon Achane is definitely going to be able to still pay off on his price, at least somewhat, because garbage time, obviously still has its own values. We've seen players in the past, like, was it Allen Robinson with the Jaguars, who benefited so much off of garbage time? He was in the top 10 for wide receivers for a while until he went to other teams and fell off immediately. But at the same time, looking at Devon Achane, he's someone who's very involved in the passing game. It's looking like the Dolphins are going to be down a lot. This kind of just feels like vindication for me. I've been saying Tua's ass for the last 3 years, and it's finally caught up. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of different situations for Tua up to this point that have changed things since then. But we finally kind of landed at this spot where I don't quite know what this offense is, but Devon Achane's going to get his volume still.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only scenarios where Achane doesn't pay off, at least close to his draft price, which is really high, is if he somehow catches up to Tua in concussion rate, or if they're so bad that they say, like, screw it, we're gonna see what like good old Ali has to offer. I think barring that, like he's gonna get the volume. He's very talented, and McDaniels does know how to use him, so there's value there.
I think that those are viable arguments. I think I mostly agree. I think at least my thought process behind drafting Achane at the 1-2 turn was, if this team is like 2023, it's a great bet. If this team is like 2024, it's still a pretty good bet. Somehow they look worse than 2024. And as somebody who has Achane bags, I'm a little bit scared of that. But I fully understand where you guys are coming from. And I do hope that he can maintain that level of value throughout the season. Let's go to the Colts side of the ball. They looked the exact opposite. They looked incredible. They scored on every single offensive possession. Hasn't been done since 1978. Crazy little stat there. As I just detailed, though, their opponents, they played the Dolphins, who were a complete joke this week. Do we think that the Colts can keep up anywhere near this level of offensive production, or should we be selling all of our Colts before they have to play a real team next week?
I want to see what happens, man, next week. Like if they play remotely well against the Broncos, like if Pittman has more than a yard with Surtain on him, like I'm convinced that Danny Dimes is going to carry them all the way to like a first round playoff exit. Like I believe that, man. Like
Okay.
they're gonna be something. They're gonna go somewhere. I don't know if it was a complete fluke, but I like next week will be telling for sure.
So the best way I can describe what this situation is, I like the skill players for this team a lot. Obviously, like Michael Pittman so far has proven to be a huge value at this point. Jonathan Taylor still got his volume, although 2 of his goal line touches were vultured by Daniel Jones, which was kind of odd to see, also a little concerning. But at the same time, man, I woke up this morning and the first thing I saw was Daniel Jones is on the trade block in one of my dynasty leagues, and all was kind of right in the world. That's kind of where I'm at right there. I don't think they're going to do this again. And obviously, this is the highest Daniel Jones's price is probably ever going to be. If you have a Daniel Jones and you want to try to sell him to a quarterback needy team, maybe. But yeah, I don't think they're doing this again. I think this is lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that side of the spectrum. I mean, I will give you a lot of credit. You had a lot of takes, a lot of must draft players and must avoid players that I didn't disagree with, but you were absolutely right, at least through 1 week. Josh Downs was relegated to a slot role and was pretty much completely overtaken by Tyler Warren, who's one guy that I think you can start week in and week out.
Yes.
And Michael Pittman looked fantastic as well, receiving a ton of volume. That I'm not quite as confident is going to continue, especially going into next week, getting potentially blanketed by Pat Surtain. But I think that Tyler Warren is legit and here to stay. You guys agree?
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a great late round value.
Yeah, and I think we know, and I think we're seeing the fruits of the labor come to fruition, that Danny Dimes will bring the value of those, at least receiving weapons up. I think that's what we expected. I think we can agree that passing volume wouldn't have been there with Anthony Richardson.
I think that's well said. Let's move on to the next game here. We got the Bucs and the Falcons, and what turned out to be a nail biter and a shootout. I want to start with the Bucs. This is going to be a quick one. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Emeka Egbuka, best receiver on the team. Point blank, period. No questions about it. Overreaction or not?
On the team, try of all time. No, but seriously, like on the Buccaneers, absolutely. He is the best receiver on this team. I think he is just ready to take the keys at this point, and that's what they did yesterday.
Vishy, are you going to talk sense into us, or is this legit?
Dude, hear me out. As someone who owns Emeka in every redraft league I'm in and started him in none, I've learned my lesson. Like, I'm never benching him again. If he's on bye, doesn't matter. Like, we never know. He's that good. I'm keeping him in the lineup until I see a negative total, man. Like that's it. End of story.
I like it. I like it. I think this is actually a reasonable take. Mike Evans did out-target him by 2. I think it was like 8-6 in targets, but he got vastly outproduced by Egbuka, who found the end zone twice. Touchdowns aren't necessarily the most sticky stat, and we know that Mike Evans is a guy that gets in the end zone a lot, but still, I was very, very impressed, and I think that he's easily a wide receiver 2, maybe if not better throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we shall see there. Let's go to the other side of the ball with the Falcons. Vishy, I know you're excited about this one. Bijan Robinson started off the game with an incredible receiving touchdown, finished the game with 100 receiving yards. I thought that was really encouraging. But when it came to the ground game, he only went 12 for 24. He split a significant amount of his rush work with Tyler Algier. And the offensive line, I thought, didn't live up to kind of the offseason expectations that we had for this unit as a whole. Should we be worried about Bijan's game-to-game consistency, or is he just obviously a plug-and-play stud and still potentially the RB1 on the season?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, the Falcons didn't look phenomenal by any means, but especially if you're in like any half or full PPR league, like the receiving work is significant, maybe more than the rushing work. So I think being worried is an overreaction. Like if there's a game where he doesn't produce right away, I think the Falcons staff is smart enough to know to get him the ball. Even if they don't think it's the best, they know that we'll all complain if they don't do that. And then, like, if they are winning a game, and he hasn't produced much, like, he's a running back on a team, like, with a game script that favors him. So, when you draft someone like, second overall, yeah, like, odds are they're not going to end up second overall. But I think it's a good bet that he's plug and play, obviously, the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's somebody that I think is set and forget, and he's just going to end up getting that volume. I think this team has made sure that they've emphasized getting the ball to their weapons, especially like Drake London before he ended up going down. I think he still finished the game with a 35% target share, even after getting hurt. So, yeah, I think that Bijan is definitely good to go. Even though he's not getting all of the touches, I think he's going to get the valuable touches, and they're going to get him out there in the situations where they need, their hoopers out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree. This one was more of a layup. I thought it was just an interesting thing to kind of bring up based on the lack of efficiency on the ground, but there's no question you have him in your lineup every single week. Let's go to the Rams and the Texans in what was a low-scoring affair that I don't think we all would have expected to be. We'll start with the Rams side of the ball. Puka was incredible, like so good, and he did it after taking a crazy hit where he had to get evaluated for a concussion. He was like bleeding from his eye. It was nuts, and he still managed to produce really, really well. I don't think that necessarily should be news to anyone, though, because we all knew Puka was awesome. What is news is that after all of the offseason talk of potentially taking more of a committee approach in this backfield, Jarquez Hunter was made inactive, and Blake Corum only got 1 carry. So do we think that this is just a week 1 thing, or do we think that we're once again doing this Kyren Williams bell cow season again?
So being honest, I kind of just trust Sean McVay. Whenever he shows us what he's doing, I think this has kind of been proven to be what he's doing. And when it comes to Kyren Williams, he just got paid. Obviously the offense has been rolling through him for the past couple of years. I don't see any reason for them to, deviate away from that, because he has been as efficient with the ball as he has been. And yeah, like you said, he just kind of complements this offense extremely well. When it comes to Jarquez Hunter being just inactive, I think that's a huge sort of indicator as to how he's at least viewed right now. I don't think they trust him in that position at the moment. And honestly, I think a lot of this kind of stems from Matt Stafford kind of dealing with his health issues. I think if he was completely healthy, maybe this running back room is a little bit more robust. But right now, you need the guys out there that are going to protect your quarterback. So we're going to see a lot of Kyren Williams, at least until those struggles are gone.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. Like he's a bell cow again. He's scoring touchdowns again. Can't be surprised when he produces well.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that is the expectation. I think that's what we will see going forward. I push back just a tiny bit on Will's take. Like, he hasn't been that efficient, and I think that's why people have been calling for this to be more of a committee, and why we were more willing to believe that they could be telling the truth when putting out those statements. But ultimately, none of that matters. Kyren Williams looks like he's going to be the full-time guy there. Let's go to the Steelers and the Jets, which kind of the opposite of the Rams and Texans, ended up being a shootout in a very unexpected fashion. We'll start with the Steelers. Passed the ball a ton. Aaron Rodgers ended with 4 touchdowns. I might have to take the L on this being a slow run first team, or maybe this is just a week 1 thing. we'll have to see. But the take that I do want to get to, and the take that I think I did get right, is that Caleb Johnson was not ready to see the field. He only saw 0.5 weighted opportunities compared to Warren's 12.6 and Gainwell's 9.4. Hot take here, Caleb should be dropped in most 12-man leagues. Overreaction or no?
I don't think it is, and I'm usually in favor of holding. Like, you want to hold the rookie running backs and receivers. They usually, your best bets in the mid rounds end up producing towards the end of the season. But I mean, nothing that they showed here indicated that they're even interested in Caleb taking over a bell cow role. Could go full blown committee, but that's not something we're interested in later season. That's what you invest in early season to see if someone breaks away from that committee. I'll say I'm worried about Warren's upside with the usage that we saw of Gainwell too, and maybe once Caleb starts entering the mix a bit. But I think it's hard to justify rostering Caleb Johnson for who knows how many weeks until he starts producing well enough to start.
And I 100% agree with that. Right now, Caleb Johnson is fighting to get onto the field, and that's something the team's been telling us since, preseason, that he's been struggling. And, Aaron Rodgers probably also playing a big part in, wanting the guys out there who are going to play well too, because, he's not going to want to waste time. So, yeah, we're not going to see Caleb Johnson out there until he's ready and the team's ready for him to be out there too.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I agree with y'all's thoughts. Let's go to the Jets. I thought this was a really exciting performance from them. Justin Fields had a huge day. Breece Hall looked really explosive and healthy for the first time in a while. Garrett Wilson dunked on me, another guy that I had on my all fade list, and he was not happy about that. He had a huge game. So my prompt to you guys here, is the Jets' new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, the new Ben Johnson, coming from that Lions system? And will the Jets' offense continue to be awesome for fantasy, or am I getting too far ahead of myself?
I'm cautiously optimistic, only because this is a Jets team we didn't know if they were going to be able to put up 21 points a week, and they put up 32 this past week. So it's like, you don't do that on accident, especially against a team that has Jalen Ramsey, TJ Watt on the other side of the ball. Like Justin Fields alluded to, he said they have some really great guys on the other side of the ball. Some things didn't go their way. They're working to be better. And that's honestly great to hear from him on that side, just knowing that they were that close to beating this team and, going through this shootout and being able to actually perform in the shootout. We didn't think they were going to be able to do this. And we didn't think the passing volume was going to be here for Justin Fields at all. And we had Garrett Wilson as a fade before this season started. And they kind of proved us wrong on just about every front yesterday. And I don't think that's an accident.
Yeah, I think they're just doing us a favor. I think they're saying, here are the three guys that are going to produce in fantasy. Their names are Justin Fields, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. Start them and don't worry about anyone else. And Look, we can't complain. I'm with it.
That's the exact type of offenses that you want to invest in. It's clear cut, it's simple, it's consolidated. Those are the best type of situations. And it's just, like we said, I didn't expect this level of competency from Justin Fields, this level of volume in the passing game. But we got it, and I'm happy about it, and I hope it continues. Let's go to the Bengals and the Browns. This one was a low-scoring affair. The Bengals, last year, their bad defense, I thought, was beneficial to their offense and to their fantasy pieces. It meant that they were behind a lot. It meant they had to throw a ton. And so things were good for the passing game and for Chase Brown. So far through 1 week, their defense was so bad that their offense could never see the field. But this is also kind of a case of what the Bengals do year in and year out. They've started slow each of the last 3 seasons. Do you guys think this is a legitimate concern rest of season, or are they just working out the kinks in week 1?
I mean, I think like everyone that had the 101 this year would go nuclear if like Jamar continues to be this bad. So like in honor of them and everyone who also drafted T and Burrow who had high ADPs, let's just say it's a fluke. If we go a couple weeks, like definitely time to panic. But the problem is like in the context of leagues, their cost is so high that there's nothing you can do other than hold or just see a massive loss. I mean, if Jamar continues to perform in this like low single digit points per game, then like what are people going to pay to get him? And so it really puts you in a tricky situation. But I mean, it's like you said, I think if the defense was that bad, I probably should at least be a little worried right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they need to make some adjustments, or we're in for a super rough season with the Bengals. Because if teams just figured out they can just keep the ball and just keep the ball away from the offense, then yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say start your studs. All of these guys had really high expectations, and like I said, this has been kind of a pattern for them. But this was also the first offseason and the first preseason where they gave them like all of the starters reps, and so I thought maybe this wouldn't be an issue early on in the season, but it has been again. So I'm sticking to start your studs. Don't worry, don't panic too much yet, but not super confident about it. We'll have to see. The Browns on the other side of the ball, the rookies stole the show. This was a lot of fun. Harold Fannin had the most receptions by a rookie tight end in a debut in NFL history. Dylan Sampson led the entire early game slate in weighted opportunities and tied for the most receptions for a rookie running back in their first NFL game. Super, super impressive from those two guys. So this is a two-parter that I'm going to pose to y'all. Fannin, top 10 tight end rest of season, and Sampson is still going to have a significant and meaningful fantasy role regardless of Judkins' status. Overreaction or no?
If Harold Fannin gets this volume for the rest of the season, yeah, I think he's easily going to be top 10. But it's just it's tough with this Browns team because I don't really know if any of these takeaways are actually takeaways, because if this team isn't competitive come week 4 or 5, right? Maybe even week 6, who's going to be at quarterback? Are they still going to keep Joe Flacco there? Is it still going to be distributed the same way? Does Dylan Gabriel have the same, targets? Does he target everybody the same? Does Shadur target everyone the same? That's why I'm saying, like, this week 1, I think for the next couple of weeks, yes, I think this is what we can probably expect. But if this Browns team struggles in real life and decides to like start losing and keep losing like this, I don't know how long it's going to stay like this.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a unique position where like they're not exactly the best in public light right now, and so they have nothing to lose by evaluating talent like rookies like Fannin or Dylan Sampson, and it's clear that they're both talented. So I agree that there's like a lot of uncertainty if they switch to Dylan Gabriel or then Shadur. Who knows what'll happen? But I think in those situations they're gonna also continue to test out what these guys have to offer. And again, they look good, so I don't think it's an overreaction to say they'll at least be top 10, maybe a stretch, but I don't think it's an overreaction to say they'll be relevant in like leagues that are standard sized.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're rookies, and so they wouldn't have any reason to go away from them considering their team situation. They know that they're not competitive. But I do think it's a good point to bring up Flacco potentially leaving and having that just crater their offense and the passing volume, especially. I think that that's a possibility. And the fact that they played against a terrible Bengals defense is a point against them as well. I think the intention is there. These guys have that role, and that's what Kevin Stefanski wants for them. But we'll see if they can maintain it throughout the season. Let's go to the Jaguars and the Panthers. I was very interested in this game. I think we kind of all three expected it to be more of a shootout than it was. Ended up being a dominant performance from the Jaguars. Liam Cohen, I think, is a running game mastermind. Overall offensive mastermind. But what he did for the run game was crazy. Took the Bucs from a bottom 3 rushing efficiency team to top 3 in 1 year. He leaves. We see in week 1 that they're back to bottom 3, at least for right now, through just 1 week. And then at the same time, Travis Etienne posts the second highest rushing total of his career. So clearly Cohen is great for that. And also I think it's clear that Etienne right now is the biggest benefactor, which is, I don't want to speak for you guys, but the exact opposite of what I expected coming into the season. He was the guy that I was betting against out of the 3. So do we buy that Etienne is a top 12 back rest of season? Is that an overreaction? What do we think?
Cohen, he might have picked his Bucky, and Etienne looks like he'll get his volume, but I'll only buy that he's a top 12 running back if Trevor Lawrence continues to develop. I don't think he looked amazing. I think there's concerns about his development as a whole. I mean, Cohen can only do so much as a coach to enable the run game on the offense as a whole. And so if Trevor Lawrence doesn't develop and end up, showing off his talent as like a top 10 QB, that just might cap the offense as a whole. I mean, there's only so much a team can do in a limited offense like that.
So I kind of think that with as versatile as the pieces on this offense are, with like a BTJ and Travis Hunter, and then ETN, because out of all three running backs, I feel like Travis Etienne is the most well-rounded, or has like the biggest capability of being a workhorse in terms of like he's very good at catching the ball, is great in between the tackles. At least when we saw him at the peak of what his career was in 2023, when he was actually having a really good season. Obviously, last year was really bad. And I think that may just be, last year was possibly a slump. Liam Cohen may have figured it out. And I think there is a good possibility ETN could be a top 12 running back this year. Even if Trevor Lawrence is bad, with the role that Travis Etienne could hold in this offense of being like that guy who gets those checkdowns, with the guy who's good in between the tackles and can break off a big run and has that breakaway speed to go with it. I think that he could still carve out a role and still be very relevant in fantasy, even though this offense, well, obviously this offense did perform very well. I'm not going to even sit here. They obviously dominated the Panthers this past weekend. So we're talking on hypotheticals of this offense not performing in the future, because obviously the Panthers aren't a powerhouse. But I still think that Travis Etienne would still hold his role in this offense and still hold value throughout the season.
I think that's fair. I do worry that ETN does have a tendency of kind of breaking down or slowing down from a production and health perspective throughout each season that he's been in the league. And Tootin, I think, is still developing, and they want him to have a role in this offense. They showed that they clearly don't want Tank Bigsby to have a role. That was made very apparent. And so the thresholds that Tootin has to get over to become involved, I think, got even easier. So I think ETN is a top 12 back for now, but I'm not really ready to commit to that for like a full season long slate of games. Let's go to the Panthers. And this was rough. This was a really bad performance. Bryce Young probably is who we thought he was. There was a 5-game stretch last year that got everybody excited. He wasn't as bad as he had been, but he was kind of back to the old Bryce Young. And I'm not sure that the level of optimism that people had for him was warranted. Even considering the great roles that Tet McMillan and Chuba Hubbard have from an opportunity perspective and showed off in week 1, I think they're going to be frustratingly inconsistent week to week and borderline flex plays, kind of on average. Do we think that that's an overreaction, underreaction? Where are we at with that?
So this is kind of where I landed at with Tet McMillan when it came to his value, especially even in dynasty leagues where people were saying, where do you value Tet McMillan? I think he's going to be one of those guys, and obviously we saw it this past week. He's going to get a ton of volume. He got 9 targets this past weekend. So I think that's going to continue because they don't really have a ton of other people to throw the ball to out there. But at the same time, if Bryce Young is as bad as he has been, then yeah, I think it's going to be frustratingly inconsistent. It's going to be 9 targets, but how many of them are going to be catchable? You know what I mean? It's going to be one of those where we're going to look at it down the road and say, man, this guy had a lot of targets, but what percentage of them could he actually get to? And I think that's going to be a problem throughout this season for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think to talk more about Tet, he might start to produce better, and Bryce could end up showing that he can actually perform similar to a level he did towards the end of last year when he came back in for the Panthers. But if you're a cokehead like myself, if you believe in Jalen Coker, like if Bryce Young starts playing well, but Coker comes back, like he's going to steal some targets too. So at the very least, at this point, we definitely don't have proof that Tet's going to be a great play the rest of the season. He might end up being good, but I mean, at this time, I don't think we can say that. So I don't think it's an overreaction to say that all the position players in that team are going to be just like inconsistent, frustratingly inconsistent. I think time's going to tell, but it's not looking too hot.
Yeah, this isn't a question of talent for me for those guys, and I think you guys both agree. Tet looks strong, Chuba looks good, but Bryce is going to bring things down. And also, I think it's worth noting they played the Jaguars, who were projected to be among the worst defensive units in the league and scored 3 points. So it's only going to get worse from here, is what I'm worried about. Let's go to the Raiders and the Patriots. The Raiders really surprised me in this one for multiple reasons. We thought they were going to be super run heavy. They drafted Ashton Genty. They brought in Chip Kelly, and they have Pete Carroll, who have run heavy tendencies, but they leaned into the pass in week 1 with Geno Smith posting a 72.7% dropback rate, which was second in the league in week 1. even more shocking, in my opinion, is that Brock Bowers wasn't a full-time player. He only played 51% of the snaps and ran 62% of the routes. Of course, he's still Brock Bowers and did Brock Bowers things. He crushed with 103 yards. Unfortunately, did leave the game with a knee injury. So I just posed this question to you: panic or patience with Brock Bowers and the role and kind of the injury?
So Brock Bowers is the greatest player to play the tight end position in the NFL. I say that I'm being serious too. So I think he's going to be fine. I think this is more so the Raiders realizing what they have in a guy like Michael Mayer as well. Because even like when they asked Pete Carroll if they thought of Michael Mayer as a second tight end for the team, they were like, no, he's a tight end one. He just happens to be on the team with Brock Bowers. We have two tight end ones. And, that's obviously what they show. Now with the knee injury, we're going to have to wait and see what that is. And hopefully he comes back okay and it's a speedy recovery. But when it comes to his role, I think that he's going to get super heavily targeted in this offense. We saw it, this past weekend. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot because while the narrative has been that this team is going to be very run heavy, me personally, I never really thought of it as that because even during the time Pete Carroll was there with Geno Smith in Seattle that first year, Geno Smith is the leading all-time leader in like passing yards for a season for the Seattle Seahawks from that season. So I don't think it's very much out of the realm of possibilities for this team to be pass heavy because we've seen Pete Carroll and Geno Smith kind of line up like that before. So I'm patient on Brock Bowers, extremely so, and I think this offense may provide more than we thought it was going to from the start.
I think that was really well said. And yeah, I mean, you should be patient. I think you can't be that upset with a 100-yard game in week one, with
Right.
kind of a new scheme and a couple new players. If you're upset, you're kind of a silly goose. And I think there's nothing actionable either. Like, you're not going to go sell Brock Bowers for less than what you got him for after what is an acceptable week. And so I agree. Patience, definitely not panic. We'll see what happens. Raiders could end up being fun to watch. I thought Gentry was kind of fun to watch.
Guys, I'm just trying to run an overreaction show here. You don't have to call me a silly goose. That's crazy.
Silly goose is a little harsh, bro. Like you want to watch yourself, bro. Those are fighting words.
No, I completely agree. There's no reason to panic on Bowers. I am genuinely surprised about the route share. We saw this in that preseason game, but I thought that was just kind of fake news, but it turned out to be real. We'll see if Chip Kelly comes to his senses and gives him even more of a full-time role after that production. But either way, he's still going to be more than viable and probably still the tight end one overall. Let's go to the Patriots. We're talking Travion Henderson. He only got 38% of the carries, and he also ceded the only goal line carry to Ramondre Stevenson. What was encouraging is that we did see 6 targets, but the overall result wasn't great with just an 8-point half PPR fantasy day. We kind of knew what to expect coming into the season. He wasn't going to dominate touches immediately, but considering he got pumped up all the way into that 3-4 turn range in your drafts, do we think that he was overhyped, or is he still worth that price tag?
I think you're like, the hype definitely went far, maybe too far at cost. Maybe he wasn't the best at that 3-4 turn. Time will tell. But I don't think you can be that upset with the pick. He looked explosive and he looked fun, and 6 targets for a running back in their first game in the NFL is promising. And so, yeah, hype likely went a little too far, but I think he's going to produce at least close to ADP, and I think that carry share or the rush share is only going to go up over the course of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one that we got to be a little bit patient. I think that we knew we had to be patient from the start. I think the preseason made us think that, oh yeah, it's go time right now. We just got to hold off for a second. It's plan as usual. Just hold up. But I will agree, the price did get a little bit too high. I'm a victim of said price, so we're gonna see and hope for the best.
Yeah, I am of the camp that his hype went a little too far in terms of where he was valued in drafts, but the play overall and what we expect from him hasn't changed. This is a mid to late season play, and he's probably going to crush for you coming down the playoff stretch. So yeah, I was encouraged with what we saw. Let's go to the Cardinals and the Saints. We'll start with the Cardinals side of the ball. James Conner, I think, is somebody that we have to talk about. After being a clear bell cow for the past few seasons, He gave away a significant amount of work to Trey Benson in week 1. It was about a 60-40 split, where he still received the majority of the high-value touches, which I think is important. But without that crazy level of workhorse volume that we've seen from him over the past few years, I think it's possible he could go from like a high-end RB2 to just more of like a solid flex play. Do you guys think it's time to sell high on James Conner, or are we holding on?
Will?
So, me personally, I think the biggest draw about James Conner was the value, or was the volume that he was getting with this team. It was that, no matter what, he was getting 100% of the backfield. Now that that's getting closer to 60-40 and the season's going along and that could push up even higher, I'm not sure. I'd be interested to see what happens next week first before I sell James Conner right this second. But at the same time, do you feel like if this same thing were to happen next week, do you feel like that's just when his rate would just plummet, his value would plummet?
Yeah, I think what he's going through now is what people were worried about Kyren going through this season or game 1. Like, I think both of them are players with kind of like fragile value because, I mean, the second they lose volume without much of a receiving profile, then their value kind of shoots down. And I think that if he doesn't have much of a volume split next week too, then his value could tank. And so I don't think it's an overreaction to be worried or sell James Conner.
The only thing I'll push back on about what you said is that I do think his receiving profile is still a viable one, and we saw him get featured in the passing game a decent amount. But I think I agree. As a guy that was in on James Conner this offseason and has a lot of him, I have a lot of him on my teams. I'm getting nervous, and without that level of volume, I think I probably will test the waters and see what I can get back. I don't think it's a full panic, red alert, get rid of him. But if you can get something, reasonable in return, I think it's a viable option. Let's go to the Saints. We're talking about another running back that could be in line to lose some volume. Alvin Kamara, his target share in 2024 was 19.6%. His lowest share of that entire season was at 13%. In week 1, we saw that drop all the way down to 4.3%. While I didn't expect this sharp of a drop off, it's not super surprising given Kellen Moore's history of kind of spreading out design targets and especially screen targets. Even in his past with incredibly talented players like CeeDee Lamb, Austin Eckler, AJ Brown, no player in a Kellen Moore offense has ever seen more than 35% of the screen targets. I say again, is it time to sell high on Alvin Kamara?
What even is selling high on Alvin Kamara?
Well, I'll give you CMC. What do you think about that?
CMC for Alvin Kamara? Yeah. If that was the trade, sure, I'd do that. What is selling high? Take CMC for Alvin Kamara?
I'm joking. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. But like seriously, what is selling high on Alvin Kamara?
Well, he got into the end zone this week. I think people had high expectations for him. Maybe it's not the highest, but while he still has value, do you think his value is going to fall off a cliff after this week? Is basically what I'm asking.
I think that a huge draw of Alvin Kamara is that he gets such a huge target share and that he's so utilized in the receiving game that if that's taken away, he does become someone who is extremely touchdown dependent. But Alvin Kamara has proven to be one of the best players at scoring touchdowns we've seen, at a league standpoint. But I don't think that's something you quite want to bet on. I think like if you're looking from that perspective, I think that, now is the time to sell high on Alvin Kamara. I think he's become more touchdown dependent than anything.
Yeah, and I agree with Eric. I think I'm worried that this could be Kellen Moore kind of giving us a glimpse into what the rest of the season could hold and what his scheme could hold. And it's not like Alvin Kamara is a super young running back that we can say, well, he'll bounce back. His talent will carry him. Like, he doesn't have age going for him. I think he could hit that production clip just like James Conner, I think we just talked about, could be hitting this season. So I'm worried also. And I mean, if you think now is the time his value is highest, which it could be, then could be the time to sell.
Yeah, this is one where I don't really have any question about it. I'm looking to sell Alvin Kamara. It's not an offense that I trust to be a super high scoring one, considering their quarterback situation. And so, if we're talking about just a ground based touchdown dependent running back on an offense like that, I don't really want any part of it.
And free Chris Olave, man. He doesn't deserve what he's getting out there, bro. Free
He had a
Chris
good week one.
Olave.
He had a good week one. From a role perspective, I thought he had a good week one.
Yeah. Hospital passes are getting that insane, bro.
That's very true. That's very true. But all right, we have 3 games left on the slate here, so let's fly through these as the video is running a little bit long, but that's okay. We got the Commanders and the Giants up next. I'll try to speed through this one. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 1 over Terry or nah?
I'm going with a big old nah. Terry just started practicing like a week and a half ago, bro. Like let's give it a little bit of time, let him get a little bit more acclimated back into the offense. And I think come week 3 or 4, everything will be back to normal. But Deebo did get a lot of good work in the run game and was able to, produce there. So he was great there. I'll give him that.
You know what? To play devil's advocate, I'm going to give you a yeah. We need to see more games. We need to see more games against better defenses. But like Deebo could, as old and maybe washed or thick, if you saw the trend in the preseason videos, he could just turn out to be a steal, like an absolute steal. And so I don't think it's an overreaction to say that he'll outperform Scary Terry this year.
I think both perspectives have their merit. I think it's worth noting that Deebo doubled up the production of any other Commanders receiver just across the board. And also, I think the acquisition was purposeful. Like he's a really good scheme fit in what Cliff Kingsbury likes to do. That mesh-based offense for a horizontal run after catch guy just seems to work. I think it's viable that Terry hasn't been with the team all offseason, but I think there's a real likelihood that Deebo might just take over the majority of the volume and Terry gets to be the field stretcher and the down the field guy.
Okay.
For the Giants, this offense looked completely lost under Russell Wilson. I don't really care about Russell Wilson from a fantasy perspective unless you're in like a crazy deep Superflex league, but it matters for Malik Neighbors, who showed visible frustration throughout the game. Do you guys have high expectations for the quarterback play, whoever's under center, that it's going to improve and get Neighbors the ball, or are we really worried about this?
It's going to be dart season.
Yeah, it's going to be dart season soon. I don't have high hopes for the quarterback play, but I do have high hopes for Neighbors' volume. If Russ doesn't feed him, I feel like they're just going to give Jackson up a little post-it note in his play chart that says feed Neighbors, like, or else, and then just send him out. So, like, one way or another, he will get volume. Maybe not, week 1 wasn't the best in terms of, the catchable pass rate was pretty low, but I think eventually he'll be okay, barring toe and back injury.
I have to say, if he doesn't get the volume, Malik Neighbors is going to handle it himself. Those LSU boys don't play about their targets at all. At all.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think that's facts. Let's go to the Broncos and the Titans. I could talk about Bo Nix's game being a rough one, but I don't think that that's super actionable from a fantasy perspective. I do want to talk about RJ Harvey. Dobbins got the bulk of the carries. Weirdly, Tyler Beatty, however you say his name, got the bulk of the running back targets with 6. That's how people are saying it. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. It's just funny every time I hear it.
Sounds weird, I know. But in terms of the running back split, although Harvey didn't get very much volume, he was in a limited role. He was by far the most efficient of the group. He got 6 carries and ran for 70 yards. He was also the RB3 in total yards after contact with only 7 touches. How much trust do we put in Sean Payton to see the talent and feature it? Or do we think this is just going to be a gross 3-way committee?
You just asked me to trust Sean Payton.
I asked, do you trust Sean Payton?
I will never trust Sean Payton, but when it comes to that's the thing though with Sean Payton, you really never know, because sometimes I feel like that guy does things just to prove points. But at the same time, if he's a smart coach and he does what's good for the team, RJ Harvey will break out soon, because like you said, he was just miles better than everybody else really yesterday.
Yeah, and I think like unless you're the Rams, you can't ignore efficiency. And Harvey, like he was good, he was efficient. And I think even if the best case scenario is like that, like 1A 1B with J.K. Dobbins, who like kind of has injury history too. I don't think it's that bad. I don't think his ADP was reflecting that he would be the bell cow there, and I think they could both produce on a team that has the potential to look really good, at least with their rushing game.
Sean Payton said, "Challenge accepted. I will ignore."
Don't send him a soundbite. Do not tell him I said that.
No, I do expect that RJ Harvey is going to be featured more heavily. I don't know what Tyler, however you want to say his last name, was doing in there. That's crazy to me. But let's move on here. Let's go to the Titans. I thought Calvin Ridley was a lot of people's favorite sleeper wide receiver going into this year. He was somebody that I was interested in, but kind of just at cost, not necessarily above it. And he turned in a pretty disappointing week one with a stat line of just 4 receptions and 27 yards. Are you guys attributing that more to him being shadowed by Patrick Surtain for most of the game, which valid? Or do we have long-term concerns for Ridley's viability, considering the up and down nature of Cam Ward's play, which could also be valid?
So me personally, I would attribute a lot of it to them playing against the Broncos and him having PS2 on him the whole game. Because me personally, I think Cam Ward, he hasn't been spectacular. Like he hasn't blown the roof off of things, but I feel like he's been pretty, solid. I don't think he's been a detriment to the team by any means. I think that, as the game goes along and, he starts to get his footing, he starts to get used to the NFL speed, this offense should start to pick up a little bit more as well with that. But I think they just kind of ran into a buzzsaw week one with that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm gonna ignore the week one stats for Ridley with Surtain on him, but I think it's a good point that his success will depend like entirely on Cam Ward's development. I agree. He didn't look too bad, other than like I think what the 2 sacks he took, they put them out of field goal range. Like he was fine, and I think Ridley could demand the volume on a team that he doesn't have much competition other than Chig. So I have hope still. I think there's no point in ruling that out, but we'll have to see.
Well, also, Alec Ayomano also got a lot of volume in this offense too. I think he's like 1 target behind, but I'm not saying he's scaring me off from from Calvin Ridley or anything like that. But he's been surprisingly solid too. Or he got targeted a lot, at least.
Yeah. I think my takeaway is that even with Cam Ward not being the greatest, it's hard to be worse than Will Levis. And Calvin Ridley was startable last year in that situation. So hopefully it gets better going forward. Let's get into our last game here as we round things out. The best game of the slate by far, maybe the best game of the season, happens in week one. The Ravens versus the Bills. Vishy, I'm sorry. I know you hate to hear that. We'll start with your Ravens, Vishy. If I had told teams that roster Mark Andrews that there would have been a 40-point offensive masterclass from the Ravens and an absolute shootout with the Buffalo Bills, I feel like they would have been pretty confident that their tight end would have been top 5 in scoring or at least startable on the week. But Andrews finishes the game with 1 catch for 5 yards. Is this going to be the new norm, or is this just a fluke?
I'm gonna go with fluke. I hope it's not the new norm, man. Andrews has a history. He does better when the Ravens do better. Like I think a common argument against this is going to be, Zay looked so incredibly good, like 160 yards or something on 10, 11 targets, something like that. But like Andrews set his career touchdown record last year. I think he had 11, 13 touchdowns last year, 11. Yeah. And that was with a 1,000-yard receiver. And last time we had a 1,000-yard receiver was Hollywood. And that's when Mark Andrews had his 1,300-yard season, I think. So I think there's no reason to believe that the team going for shootouts will lead to him not performing well. But his upside could be limited when Isaiah Likely comes back. He's not getting any younger. And maybe the team has lost some faith after that playoff fiasco last year. But I think it's a little too early to pull the plug on Mark Andrews.
Hey, man. I don't really have too much of an opinion here because, like you said, I think we need to see a little bit more. But it does concern me that in the first game of the season, that is a 40-point shootout. This is what happens right here is a little bit concerning to me, just a little bit. And I don't know. Like you said, team success is going to be something that plays a lot into it. But they scored 40 points last night. That they lost, but that's still a pretty successful team, all things considered. But
I don't know. That's the floor. That's our floor. We can all go up from there.
All right. If that's the truth, then yeah, I'm optimistic for Mark Andrews. But otherwise, I'm a little cautious about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I don't think it's going to be 1 for 5 every week. He certainly is a red zone threat, and that's going to continue to be the case. But I think he's going to be entirely dependent on that. This team, even at their best, I think has featured basically one receiving option, or at least one consistently. And if that's going to be Zay this year, I'm kind of happy about it because I think Zay is going to do great for them. But I think it's going to come at the detriment of Andrews and potentially likely when he comes back. So I'm a little bit more nervous, but I can see, this team's great. They're going to score a lot of points. It's very possible that he's going to be involved. We'll see. And then lastly, the Buffalo Bills. I think Keon Coleman was kind of the story here, at least from a fantasy perspective, in terms of things that we didn't expect. He had a huge night, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 112 yards, and a touchdown. He was consistently targeted by Josh Allen in high leverage situations throughout the game. Obviously, disappointing rookie season. Not something that I expected in week 1 in the highest leverage of situations. Do we think that Keon could command enough volume to be a wide receiver 2 rest of season, or is this more of a flash in the pan considering they were trailing for most of the game?
I have been in the camp that Keon Coleman was the person that was kind of made for this team and for Josh Allen since the start. And even last year, towards the end of the season, before he got that ankle injury, he was showing some signs of actually being, what I thought he was going to be in this offense. But now, this is exactly what he's here for. Those high leverage situations, those jump ball opportunities. I think they needed a year to get that rhythm together. But now him and Josh Allen, I think they're on the same page. And this is what they got at Keon Coleman for. So, yeah, I think that he could command the volume. And at the very least, he's got the role in the offense.
I think that's a really fun take. I think there's gonna be a lot of dissent about this online. I think I've already seen some even today. The passing volume was very abnormal. And it's not often you're playing in a shootout with an offense like the Ravens. And he did get lucky. I think we also saw that tip catch that he had in the end zone. And they were using him in high leverage situations, but I think it was 2 or 3 missed 2-point conversions that were all to him. So I guess they were trying to use him. I think that one game makes me hesitant to commit to him being a top 20 receiver rest of the season, but it's very possible. It's certainly within his range of outcomes. Just be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, no questions asked.
I think it's easy to say that his role is solidified and much better than I personally expected it to be coming into the season. I'm not willing to go as far as to say he can be a wide receiver 2 consistently, because it's absurd to think that the Bills are going to be trailing in any game except ones they play the Ravens, probably. And so the pass volume just isn't going to be there to sustain that. But I'm very impressed and encouraged by what we saw from Keon. Any final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
Football's
every
back.
Time. Football's back, baby. That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I was looking for. Let's go, Vish. Football's back. I hope y'all loved it. Week 1 in the books. Watch Monday Night Football. If you guys enjoyed, if you guys learned anything, please do leave a like on the video, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest releases. If you guys want to talk about any of the games that we missed, hit us up in the comments and join the Discord link in the description. But I think that'll do it. So I appreciate y'all as always, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.
Caleb Williams, please stun on these hoes.
Bye.